This is tape number 2. Tape number 2. Where I left off with Israel. Israel chapter 1 verse, or Israel chapter 10 verse 1 through 2. We have trespassed against God and have taken strange wives. Now read chapter 6 verse 21 also of Israel, and chapters 9 through 10. Nehemiah chapter 10 verse 28 and 30, and chapter 13 verse 23 through 30. You have to read these, and I count on you to read these in your own Bible. Israel and Nehemiah settled a race problem by segregation and separation and severe punishment for mixing. This is clearly written. Now, interracial marriage weakens nations. Israel chapter 9 verse 12. Israel chapter 1 verse, read the whole chapter 9. It tells you the sins that they intermix with another nation and blah blah blah. Okay, you're going to really get the punch right there. Okay, now are Negroes' characteristics unchangeable? Read Jeremiah chapter 13 verse 23. Can the Ethiopian change his skin, or the leopard its spots? In other words, you know, black blood, when it mixes with white blood, for example, it gets to be a thinner black. But the white blood gets erased forever. Does that sound like genocide to you? Does that sound like we're destroying something that God created? And this concludes the Old Testament. And this ain't all that's in the Old Testament. This is just a brief scan. I was just sitting here and took up this and read it, chopped through it real quick. So if you find more than this in there, I wouldn't be surprised. I want to jump into chapter 2, the New Testament. The New Testament still talking about interracial marriage and how it's wrong, and about segregation. Christ teaches individuals merit, not equality. Merit, not equality. Merit, not equality. Matthew chapter 25 verse 14 through 30. Parables of talents shows that God endows people differently. The goal should be individual excellence. Individual excellence, not equality. Now, Paul stressed contentment with one state. Whatever state you're in, or what talent you've been given, you should be content with it. Philippians chapter 4 verse 11. I have learned in whatever state I am therewith to be content. And you can also see Timothy chapter 6 verse 6. Chapter 6 verse 6. Now you can also look at Hebrews chapter 13 verse 5. Chapter 13 verse 5, Hebrews. Let your conversation be without covertness, and be content with such things you have. Now, separation by geological bounds is another thing we have to take a look at. So you look at Acts chapter 17 verse 26. And God hath made of the one blood, the common heritage is Adam, all nations of men, and hath determined the bounds of their habitations. Determined the bounds of their habitations. God himself is the authority of segregation. The word blood was not in the original separation from spiritual unequals. In 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 14 through 17, be ye not unequaled. Be ye not unequaled at the yoke. Together with unbelievers. Wherefore come out from among them and be separate. So here I've given you several places where it's talking about everything is creation, where we're talking about seeds, strands, where we're talking about people, we're talking about severe punishments, segregation, separation. Some people are born extremely smart, some people are born retarded, some people are born without arms, some people are born blind. So we know we're not all created equal. God doesn't say that. That's something man says from one little tiny verse in the Bible. One little verse where he's talking about you will be judged by God equally according to your talents. That's a misinterpretation that's been led out by all the false prophets in the world that's teaching you wrong stuff. In other words, you could be completely retarded, blind, deaf, dumb, no arms, no legs, and you could make it to heaven, because he judges each one of us equally according to who we are and what he gave us to work with. He's fair. Okay, now absolutely nowhere does the Bible call for race mixing. The 2,000 plus years of segregation imposed upon Israel by divine authority, I might add, and infractions which brought severe punishment, gives no grounds for the charge that segregation is displeasing to God or unjust to man, or is even inherently wrong. Love, charity, and the brother's keeper. Brothers in Christ are not synonyms for integration. Christ demonstrated that they can be loved and charity without revolutionary change in social order. Racial segregation is Marxism. The social gospel emphasizes reformation instead of salvation. Social reformers advocate integration, whether it's wittingly or not, are followers of the Marxist doctrine.